Hi, pumpkins, my babies. How's everyone? I don't know why I always start out like you can say something to me right now. Hi. Welcome back to Reaper Reads. Sorry I missed you guys last week. Had some stuff going on and it just was not my day. So, yes. So welcome back. We are still reading Stephen King's The Body, and it is fucking great. And what else? Okay, I'll give you a little recap since it's been about 2 weeks. Um, let's see. I took notes. Let's see. Okay, yes. So last time we saw our little crew, they had just started their little journey. And as they were walking along in the heat, they realized they didn't pack any food. Only like 2 of them have brought canteens of water, and it is sweltering outside. So, not too smart. And so they decided, well, we got to go to the store. And rather than everybody go and waste all that time, they said, let's flip a coin and then decide who goes. In that coin flip, the first time they did it, all 4 of their coins came out as tails, which was a goocher, as they said. Just emphasizing that because it might pop back up later. And what else? Okay, yes. And then they flipped the coins again, and Gordy had gotten the only tails or something like that. So anyway, he had to go, and he went to the convenience store, and it seems like it's for lack of a better word, it seemed like the convenience store owner, if you will, it seemed like he gave a shit. And he's like, oh, hey, I know your brother, which, as we all know, Gordy lost his brother in a car accident. Yes. And what else? Oh yeah, he acts like he gives a fuck. He's like, oh wow, I knew your brother, and this, that, and the third. And then we come to find out very soon that he's just trying to distract him. And that is like, I'm like, that's low. And Gordy notices that he had like his thumb on the scale and is trying to like charge him extra for some meat that he was buying, and just, being a dick. And it's like, first of all, you did that to a kid. Second of all, the thing you used as a distraction is his dead brother. Like, what's wrong with you, piece of shit? And reason I bring up that whole thing is because they refer to it as him japping him. They call it, to be jabbed, which is an ethnic slur, and demeaning toward Japanese. But just know, authors do that a lot. That doesn't reflect on the author, like it's supposed to be more of an immersive tool. It puts the reader like really in the main character's space, and it allows the reader to hear these thoughts and everything painted directly from like the character's point of view. And are we calling Gordy a racist? No, I don't think Gordy's racist either. I think that was just the language of the time, and for lack of a better word, he did his thing. So, let's see, what else? Oh, by the way, I will try to be better about that, like providing like a little trigger warning or whatever at the top of each episode, because like I said, I do rehearse before, and so I read through and see how long it's going to be and what's a good stopping point. So I will remember, from here on out, if I see something or read something, I'll make a note of it, and you'll hear about trigger warning or something like that at the top of each episode. So, yay. Also, I appreciate you guys bearing with me with all my scheduling issues, and I'm always effing late to this damn podcast. I'm always late. So I'm hoping that once things settle down, I'm getting ready to move, and there's just 30 things going on at one time. But I'm hoping that once things settle down and I get more into a groove and a rhythm, that punctuality will be A1. Okay. So I'm letting 5 minutes? Okay. I know last week I said, or in the last episode, I said that we were going to finish it today, but there's a lot of shit just packed into that last 100 or so pages. And I don't want to bombard, because this is a chill, podcast. The point of it is to relieve stress, not cause it. So this next section that we're going to read today is a little heavy. There's a lot going on. No trigger warnings that I know of. I mean, you'll probably hear Jap again, because Gordy tells his friends about it and whatever. But I think that's pretty much it. Nothing too wild. But I mean, if I were gonna say there was a trigger warning, here at the top of this next chapter, someone gets a little emotional. So we will see how that plays out. Any comments and shit you could put in the little chat. I don't know why I'm pointing. I'm looking at a screen, so it's over here in this vicinity for me. Yes. So without further ado, without further ado, still trying to get used to this. Be white, black. Bear with me. Jesus. Okay, here I am. Had to smoke a little bit of weed, because y'all know. And also lotion. All right. Did I miss anything in my notes? Okay. Nope, that's all. So here we go. Back into the body. Oh, one more thing. Um, um, where we're starting right now, they just finished their whole little mishap with Milo, the owner, and Chopper, the famous beast dog, um, that Gordy and all the other kids had heard so much about, and they had heard that it was a great big monster dog, and he'll eat you, and Chopper sick balls and the like. And Gordy got to see with his own eyes that Chopper's a little puss. No, no, not a puss, but just a little, like a regular ass dog. And so Gordy got his first lesson in exaggeration. So cute. Alrighty, let's do this. And we are this is right after they got away from Milo, and Milo's had a bunch of shit about Teddy's dad. Remember, Teddy is the crazy one. What a crazy dad. So, here we go. 13. There was some discussion in righteous tones that were actually kind of forced sounding about how we had shown that creepy Milo Pressman we weren't just another bunch of pussies. I told how the guy at the Florida market had tried to jap us, and then we fell into a gloomy silence, thinking it was over. Oh, thinking it over. For my part, I was thinking that maybe there was something to that stupid Goocher business after all. Things couldn't have turned out much worse. In fact, I thought it might be better to just keep going and spare my folks the pain of having one son in the Castleview Cemetery and one in South Wyndham Boys Correctional. I had no doubt that Milo would go to the cops as soon as the importance of the dump having been closed at the time of the incident filtered back into his thick skull. When that happened, he would realize that I really had been trespassing, public property or not. Probably that gave him every right in the world to sick his stupid dog on me. And while Chopper wasn't the hellhound he was cracked up to be, he sure would have ripped the sit-down out of my jeans if I hadn't won the race to the fence. All of it put a big, dark crimp in the day. And there was another gloomy idea rolling around inside my head. The idea that this was no lark after all. And maybe we deserved our bad luck. Maybe it was even God warning us to go home. What were we doing anyway? Going to look at some kid that had gotten himself all mashed up by a freight train. But we were doing it, and none of us wanted to stop. We had almost reached the trestle, which carried the tracks across the river, when Teddy burst into tears. It was as if a great inner tidal wave had broken through a carefully constructed set of mental dikes. No bullshit. It was that sudden and that fierce. The sobs doubled him over like punches, and he sort of collapsed into a heap, his hands going from his stomach to the mutilated gobs of flesh that were the remains of his ears. He went on crying in hard, violent bursts. None of us knew what the fuck to do. It wasn't crying like when you got hit by a line drive while you were playing shortstop, or smashed on the head playing tackle football on the common, or when you fell off your bike. There was nothing physically wrong with him. We walked away a little and watched him, our hands in our pockets. "Hey, man," Vern said in a very thin voice. Chris and I looked at Vern hopefully. "Hey, man" was always a good start, but Vern couldn't follow up. Teddy leaned forward onto the cross ties and put a hand over his eyes. Now he looked like he was doing the Allah bit. Salami, 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 baloney, as Popeye says. Except it wasn't funny. At last, when the force of his crying had trailed off a little, it was Chris who went to him. He was the toughest guy in our gang. Maybe even tougher than Jamie Gallen, I thought privately. But he was also the guy who made the best peace. He had a way about it. I'd seen him sit down on the curb next to a little kid with a scraped knee, a kid he didn't even fucking know, and get him talking about something. The Shrine Circus that was coming to town, or Huckleberry Hound on TV, until the kid forgot he was supposed to be hurt. Chris was good at it. He was tough enough to be good at it. Listen, Teddy, what do you care what a fat old pile of shit like him said about your father, huh? I mean, sincerely, that don't change nothing, does it? What a fat old pile of shit like him says, huh? Huh? Does it? Teddy shook his head violently. It changed nothing. But to hear it spoken of in bright daylight, something he must have gone over and over in his mind while he was lying awake in bed and looking at the moon off center in one window pane. Something he must have thought about in his slow and broken way until it seemed almost holy, trying to make sense out of it. And then to have it brought home to him that everybody else had merely dismissed his dad as a loony, that had rocked him. But it changed nothing. Nothing. He still stormed the beach at Normandy, right? Chris said. He picked up one of Teddy's sweaty, grimy hands and patted it. Teddy nodded fiercely, crying. Snot was running out of his nose. Do you think that pile of shit was at Normandy? Teddy shook his head violently. No. Do you think that guy knows you? No, but, or your father. He one of your father's buddies? No. Angry, horrified, the thought. Teddy's chest heaved, and more sobs came out of it. He had pushed his hair away from his ears, and I could see the round brown plastic button of the hearing aid set in the middle of his right one. The shape of the hearing aid made more sense than the shape of his ear, if you get what I mean. Chris said calmly, "Talk is cheap." Teddy nodded, still not looking up. And whatever's between you and your old man, talk can't change that. Teddy's head shook without definition, unsure if this was true. Someone had redefined his pain, and redefined it in shockingly common terms. That would, loony, have to be examined, fucking Section 8, later, in depth, on long sleepless nights. Chris rocked him. He was ranking you, man, he said in soothing cadences that were almost a lullaby. He was trying to rank you over that friggin' fence. You know it? No strain, man. No fucking strain. He don't know nothing about your old man. He don't know nothing but stuff he heard from those rum-dums down at the Mellow Tiger. He's just dog shit, man. Right, Teddy? Huh? Right? Teddy's crying was down to sniffles. He wiped his eyes, leaving 2 sooty rings around them, and sat up. I'm okay, he said, and the sound of his own voice seemed to convince him. Yeah, I'm okay. He stood up and put his glasses back on, dressing his naked face, it seemed to me. He laughed thinly and swiped his bare arm across the snot of his upper lip. Fucking crybaby, right? No, man, Vern said uncomfortably. If anyone was raking out my dad, then you gotta kill him, Teddy said briskly, almost arrogantly. Kill their asses. Right, Chris? Right, Chris said amiably and clapped Teddy on the back. I kept rehearsing that word so hard. Right, Gordy? Absolutely, I said, wondering how Teddy could care so much for his dad when his dad had practically killed him, and how I couldn't seem to give much of a shit one way or the other about my own dad, when so far as I could remember, he had never laid a hand on me since I was 3 and got some bleach from under the sink and started to eat it. We walked another 200 yards down the tracks, and Teddy said in a quieter voice, Hey, if I spoiled your good time, I'm sorry. I guess that was pretty stupid shit back there at the fence. I ain't sure I want it to be no good time, Vern said suddenly. Chris looked at him. You saying you want to go back, man? No, Vern's face nodded in thought. But going to see a dead kid, it shouldn't be a party, maybe. I mean, if you can dig it. I mean, he looked at us rather wildly. I mean, I could be a little scared, if you get me. Nobody said anything, and Vern plunged on. I mean, sometimes I get nightmares. Like, you guys remember the time Danny Naughton left that pile of old funny books? The ones with the vampires and people getting cut up and all that shit? Jeez, I'm crow. I'd wake up in the middle of the night dreaming about some guy hanging in a house with his face all green or something, like that. And it seems like there's something under the bed. And if I dangled a hand over the side, that thing might, grab me. We all began to nod. We knew about the night shift. I would have laughed then, though, if you had told me that one day, not too many years from then, I'd parlay all those childhood fears and night sweats into about $1 million. And I don't dare say anything because my friggin' brother, well, Billy, he'd broadcast it. He shrugged miserably. So I'm scared to look at that kid, because if he's really bad. I swallowed and glanced at Chris. He was looking gravely at Vern and nodding for him to go on. If he's really bad, Vern resumed, I'll have nightmares about him and wake up thinking it's him under my bed. I'll cut up in a pool of blood like he just came out of those Salad Master gadgets they show on TV. Just eyeballs and hair, but moving somehow, if you can dig that. Moving somehow, and getting ready to grab. Jesus Christ, Teddy said thickly. What a fucking bedtime story. Well, I can't help it, Vern said, his voice defensive. But I feel like we have to see him, even if there are bad dreams, Like we have to. But maybe it shouldn't be no good time. Yeah, Chris said softly. Maybe it shouldn't. Vern said pleadingly, You won't tell none of the other guys, will you? I don't mean about the nightmares. Everybody has those. I mean about waking up and thinking there might be something under the bed. I'm too fucking old for the boogeyman. We all said we wouldn't tell, and a glum silence fell over us again. It was only 2:45, but it felt much later. It was too hot, and too much had happened. We weren't even over into Harlow yet. We were going to have to pick them up and lay them down if we were going to make some real miles before dark. We passed the railroad junction and a signal on a tall, rusty pole, and all of us paused to chuck cinders at the steel flag on top, but nobody hit it. And around 3:30, we came to the Castle River and the GS&WM trestle, which crossed it. $14. Who is that? I love you. Thank you for watching. The river was better than 100 yards across at that point in 1960. I've been back to look at it since then and found it had narrowed up quite a bit during the years between. They're always fooling with the river, trying to make it work better for the mills, and they put in so many dams that it's pretty well tamed. But in those days, there were only 3 dams on the whole length of the river as it ran across New Hampshire and half of Maine. The castle was still almost free back then, and every 3rd spring, it would overflow its banks and cover Route 136 in either Harlow or Danvers Junction, or both. Now, at the end of the driest summer Western Maine had seen since the Depression, it was still broad. From where we stood on the Castle Rock side, the bulking forest on the Harlow side looked like a different country altogether. The pines and spruces over there were bluish in the heat haze of the afternoon. The rails went across the water 50 feet up, supported by an underpinning of tarred wooden support posts and crisscrossing beams. The water was so shallow that you could look down and see the tops of the cement plugs, which had been planted 10 feet deep in the riverbed to hold up the trestle. The trestle itself was pretty chintzy. That was a fun word too, chintzy. Chintzy. And it means cheap. The rails ran over a long, narrow wooden platform of 6x4s. There was a 4-inch gap between each pair of these beams, where you could look all the way down into the water. On the sides, there was no more than 18 inches between the rail and the edge of the trestle. If a train came, it was maybe enough room to avoid getting plastered. But the wind generated by a half-balling freight houseway. This candle. This one always tries to go out like so early. It's annoying. Anyway. But yeah. But the wind generated by a high-balling freight would surely sweep you off to Woodsard. Words. I did not warm up today, can you tell? I didn't do any of my tongue twisters. None of that. I was just like, do it. Can you tell? Okay. But the wind generated by a high-balling freight would surely sweep you off to fall to a certain death against the rocks just below the surface of the shallow running water. Looking at the trestle, we all felt fear. I'm going to pause and I'm going to go and do a warm-up and then I'll be back. No, I'm kidding. Let's do this. Looking at the trestle, we all felt fear start to crawl around in our bellies. And mixing uneasily with the fear was the excitement of a boss dare, a really big one, something you could brag on for weeks after you got home, if you got home. That clear light was creeping back into Teddy's eyes, and I thought he wasn't seeing the GS and WM train trestle at all, but a long sandy beach, 1,000 LSTs aground in the foaming waves, 10,000 GIs charging up the sand, combat boots digging. They were leaping rolls of barbed wire, tossing grenades at pillboxes, overrunning machine gun nests. We were standing beside the tracks where the cinders sloped away toward the river's cut, the place where the embankment stopped and the trestle began. Looking down, I could see where the slope started to get steep. The cinders gave way to scraggly, tough-looking bushes and slabs of gray rock. Further down, there were a few stunted firs with exposed roots writhing their way out of fissures in the plates of rock. They seemed to be looking down at their own miserable reflections in the running water. At this point, the Castle River actually looked fairly clean. At Castle Rock, it was just entering Maine's textile mill belt. But there were no fish jumping out there, although the river was clear enough to see the bottom. You had to go another 10 miles upstream and toward New Hampshire before you could see any fish in the castle. There were no fish, and along the edges of the river you could see dirty collars of foam around some of the rocks. The foam was the color of old ivory. The river's smell was not particularly pleasant either. It smelled like a laundry hamper full of mildewy towels. Dragonflies stitched at the surface of the water and laid their eggs with impunity. There were no trout to eat them. Hell, there weren't even any shiners. Man, Chris said softly. Come on, Teddy said, in that brisk, arrogant way. Let's go. He was already edging his way out, walking on the 6x4s between the shining rails. Here comes that iconic scene. Say, Vern said uneasily, any of you guys know when the next train's due? We all shrugged. I said, there's the Route 136 bridge. Hey, come on, give me a break, Teddy cried. That means walking 5 miles down the river on this side and then 5 miles back up on the other side. It'll take us until dark. If we use this trestle, we can get to the same place in 10 minutes. But if a train comes, there's nowhere to go, Vern said. He wasn't looking at Teddy. He was looking down at the fast, bland river. Fuck, there isn't, Teddy said indignantly. He swung over the edge and held one of the wooden supports between the rails. This nigga. He hadn't gone out very far. His sneakers were almost touching the ground. But the thought of doing that same thing above the middle of the river with a 50-foot drop beneath and a train bellowing by just over my head, a train that would probably be dropping some nice hot sparks into my hair and down the back of my neck, none of that actually made me feel like Queen for a day. See how easy it is? Teddy said. He dropped to the embankment, dusted his hands, and climbed back up beside us. You telling me you're gonna hang on that way if it's a 200-car freight? Chris asked. Just sort of hang there by your hands for 5 or 10 minutes? You chicken? Teddy shouted. No, just asking what you'd do, Chris said, grinning. Peace, man. Go around if you want to, Teddy brayed. Who gives a fuck? I'll wait for you. I'll take a nap. One train already went by, I said reluctantly. And there probably isn't any more than 2 trains a day that go through Harlow. Look at this. I kicked the weeds growing up through the railroad ties with one sneaker. There were no weeds growing between the tracks, which ran between Castle Rock and Lewiston. There. See? Teddy, triumphant. But still, there's a chance, I added. Yeah, Chris said. He was looking only at me, his eyes sparkling. Dare you, LeChance? Dares go first. Okay, Chris said. Fucking boys, I swear to God. He widened his gaze to take in Teddy and Vern. Any pussies here? No, Teddy shouted. Vern cleared his throat, croaked, cleared it again, and said, no, in a very small voice. He smiled a weak, sick smile. Okay, Chris said. But we hesitated for a moment, even Teddy, looking warily up and down the tracks. I knelt down and took one of those steel rails firmly in my hand, never minding that it was almost hot enough to blister the skin. The rail was mute. Okay, I said, and as I said it, some guy pole vaulted in my stomach. He dug his pole all the way into my balls, it felt like, and ended up sitting astride my heart. We went out onto the trestle, single file. Chris first, then Teddy, then Vern, and me playing tail end Charlie because I was the one who said dares go first. We walked on the platform cross ties between the rails, and you had to look at your feet whether you were scared of heights or not. A misstep and you would go down to your crotch, probably even with a broken ankle to pay. The embankment dropped away beneath me, and every step further out seemed to seal our decision more firmly, and to make it feel more suicidally stupid. I stopped to look up when I saw the rocks giving way to the water far beneath me. Chris and Teddy were a long way ahead, almost out over the middle, and Vern was tottering slowly along behind them, peering studiously down at his feet. He looked like an old lady trying out stilts, with his head poked downward, his back hunched, his arms held out for balance. I looked back over my shoulder. Too far, man. I had to keep going now, and not only because a train might come. If I went back, I'd be a pussy for life. So I got walking again. After looking down at that endless series of cross ties for a while, with a glimpse of running water between each pair, I started to feel dizzy and disoriented. Each time I brought my foot down, part of my brain assured me it was going to plunge through into space, even though I could see it was not. I became acutely aware of all the noises inside me and outside me, like some crazy orchestra tuning up to play. The steady thump of my heart, the blood beat in my ears like a drum being played with brushes, the creak of sinews Sinews? Is it sinews? Sinews. Like the strings of a violin that has been tuned radically upward. The steady hiss of the river, the hot hum of a locust digging into tight bark, the monotonous cry of a chickadee, and somewhere far away, a barking dog. Chopper, maybe. The mildewy smell of the Castle River was strong in my nose. The long muscles in my thighs were trembling. I kept thinking how much safer it would be, probably faster as well, if I just got down on my hands and knees and scuttered along that way. But I wouldn't do that. None of us would. If the Saturday matinee movies, Down to the Gym, had taught us anything, it was that only losers crawl. It was one of the central tenets of the gospel according to Hollywood. Good guys walk firmly upright, and if your sinews are creaking like overturned violin strings because of the adrenaline rush going on in your body, and if the long muscles in your thighs are trembling for the same reason, why, so be it. I had to stop in the middle of the trestle and look up at the sky for a while. That dizzy feeling had been getting worse. I saw phantom cross ties. They seemed to float right in front of my nose. Then they faded out, and I began to feel okay again. I looked ahead and saw I had almost caught up with Vern, who was slow poking along worse than ever. Chris and Teddy were almost all the way across. And although I've since written 7 books about people who can do such exotic things as read minds and precognate the future, that was when I had my first and last psychic flash. I'm sure that's what it was. How else to explain it? I squatted and made a fist around the rail on my left. It thrummed in my hand. It was thrumming so hard that it was like gripping a bundle of deadly metallic snakes. You've heard it said, his bowels turned to water. I know what that phrase means. Exactly what it means. It may be the most accurate cliche ever coined. I've been scared since. Badly scared. But I've never been as scared as I was in that moment, holding that hot live rail. It seemed that for a moment all my works below throat level just went limp and lay there in an internal faint. A thin stream of urine ran listlessly down the inside of one thigh. My mouth opened. I didn't open it. It opened by itself. The jaw dropping like a trap door from which the hinge pins had suddenly been removed. My tongue was plastered suffocatingly against the roof of my mouth. All my muscles were locked. That was the worst. My works went limp, but my muscles were in a kind of dreadful lock bolt, and I couldn't move at all. It was only for a moment, but in the subjective time stream, it seemed forever. All sensory input became intensified, as if some power surge had occurred in the electrical flow of my brain, cranking up everything from 110 volts to 220. I could hear a plane passing in the sky somewhere near, and had time to wish I was on it, just sitting in a window seat with a Coke in my hand and gazing idly down at the shining line of a river whose name I did not know. I could see every little splinter and gouge in the tarred crosstie I was squatting on, and out of the corner of my eye, I could see the rail itself, with my hand still clutched around it, glittering insanely. The vibration from that rail sank so deeply into my hand that when I took it away, it still vibrated, the nerve endings kicking each other over again and again, tingling the way a hand or foot tingles when it has been asleep and is starting to wake up. I could taste my saliva, suddenly all electric and sour and thickened to curds along my gums. And worst, somehow most horrible of all, I couldn't hear the train yet. Could not know if it was rushing at me from ahead or behind, or how close it was. It was invisible. It was unannounced, except for that shaking rail. There was only that to advertise its imminent arrival. An image of Ray Brower, dreadfully mangled and thrown into a ditch somewhere, like a ripped open laundry bag, reeled before my eyes. We would join him, or at least Vern and I would, or at least I would. We had invited ourselves to our own funerals. The last thought broke the paralysis, and I shot to my feet. I probably would have looked like a jack in the box to anyone watching. But to myself, I felt like a boy in underwater slow motion, shooting up not through 5 feet of air, but rather up through 500 feet of water, moving slowly, moving with a dreadful languidness as the water parted grudgingly. But at last, I did break the surface. I screamed, "Train!" The last of the paralysis fell from me, and I began to run. Vern's head jerked back over his shoulder. The surprise that distorted his face was almost comically exaggerated. Written as large as the letters in a Dick and Jane primer. He saw me break into my clumsy, shambling run, dancing from one horribly high cross tied to the next, and knew I wasn't joking. He began to run himself. Far ahead, I could see Chris stepping off the ties and onto the solid, safe embankment, and I hated him with a sudden, bright green hate, as juicy and as bitter as the sap in an April leaf. He was safe. That fucker was safe. I watched him drop to his knees and grab a rail. My left foot almost slipped into the yaw beneath me. I flailed with my arms, my eyes as hot as ball bearings in some runaway piece of machinery, got my balance and ran on. Now I was right behind Vern. We were past the halfway point, and for the first time I heard the train. It was coming from behind us, coming from the Castle Rock side of the river. It was a low rumbling noise that began to rise slightly and sort itself into the diesel thrum of the engine and the higher, more sinister sound of big grooved wheels turning heavily on the rails. "Oh, shit!" Vern screamed. "Run, you pussy!" I yelled and thumped him on the back. "I can't! I'll fall! Run faster! Oh, shit!" But he ran faster, a shambling scarecrow with a bare, sunburnt back, the collar of his shirt swinging and dangling below his butt. I could see the sweat standing out on his peeling shoulder blades, standing out in perfect little beads. I could see the fine down on the nape of his neck. His muscles clenched and loosened, clenched and loosened, clenched and loosened. His spine stood out in a series of knobs, each knob casting its own crescent-shaped shadow. I could see that those knobs grew closer. That's so weird. Sorry. I could see that those knobs grew closer together as they approached his neck. He was still holding his bedroll, and I was still holding mine. Vern's feet thudded on the cross ties. He almost missed one, lunged forward with his arms out, and I whacked him on the back again to keep him going. "Gordy, I can't! Oh, shit! Run faster, dickface!" I bellowed. And was I enjoying this? Yeah, in some peculiar self-destructive way that I have experienced since only when completely and utterly drunk. I was driving Vern Tessio like a drover, getting a particularly fine cow to market. What is a drover? It's another driver. No, I'm kidding. And maybe he was enjoying his own fear in that same way, bawling like that self-same cow, hollering and sweating, his rib cage rising and falling like the bellows of a blacksmith on a speed trip, clumsily keeping his footing, lurching ahead. The train was very loud now, its engine deepening to a steady rumble. Its whistle sounded as it crossed the junction point where we had paused to chuck cinders at the rail flag. I had finally gotten my hellhound, like it or not. I kept waiting for the trestle to start shaking under my feet. When that happened, it would be right behind us. "Go faster, Vern, faster!" Oh God, Gordy, oh God, Gordy, oh God, oh God, oh shit! The freight's electric horn suddenly spanked the air into 100 pieces with one long, loud blast, making everything you ever saw in a movie or a comic book or one of your own daydreams fly apart, letting you know what both the heroes and the cowards really heard when death flew at them. Honk, honk. And then Chris was below us and to the right, and Teddy was behind him, his glasses flashing back arcs of sunlight, and they were both mouthing a single word, and the word was jump. But the train had sucked all the blood out of the word, leaving only the shape of it, leaving only its shape in their mouths. The trestle began to shake as the train charged across it. We jumped. Vern landed full length in the dust and the cinders, and I landed right beside him, almost on top of him. I never did see that train, nor do I know if its engineer saw us. When I mentioned the possibility that he hadn't seen us to Chris a couple of years later, he said, "They don't blow the horn like that just for Chuck's, Gordy." But he could have. He could have been blowing it just for the hell of it, I suppose. Right then, such fine points didn't matter. I clapped my hands over my ears and dug my face into the hot dirt as the freight went by, metal squalling against metal, the air buffeting us. I had no urge to look at it. It was a long freight, but I never looked at all. Before it had passed completely, I felt a warm hand on my neck and knew it was Chris's. When it was gone, when I was sure it was gone, I raised my head like a soldier coming out. Of his foxhole at the end of a day-long artillery barrage. Words. Vern was still plastered into the dirt, shivering. Chris was sitting cross-legged between us, one hand on Vern's sweaty neck, the other still on mine. When Vern finally sat up, shaking all over and licking his lips compulsively, Chris said, "What'd you guys think if we drink those Cokes? Could anyone use one besides me?" We all thought we could use one. Okay, that's where I'm pausing, because that's always the... But, what is that? Okay. So, that was the infamous train scene. Like, if you saw the movie Stand By Me a very long time ago when it came out, that half the time people when I like bring it up to them, I'm like, "Oh yeah, have you seen Stand By Me?" Because that's my favorite movie. And they're like, "Why does that sound familiar?" I think I kind of remember. And first thing I always say, I'm like, "The four boys that go and see the dead body." And they're like, and I'm like, the kids, the train was coming at them and they jumped off the fucking shit. Almost got in that one. And everybody knows what I'm talking about as soon as I bring up the train scene. I always loved the book version because in the movie they have Vern crawl. They really emphasize like Vern being a pussy, but he's really not a pussy. He's just the lights ain't all on upstairs. He's just a little shit. Like just a little dumbass boy. But he's not like the idiot that they make him out to be. To be honest, the way Chris and Gordy are portrayed, they're actually like smarter, than the average kid at that age, or the average boy at that age anyway. And so I always found that interesting and endearing. But yes, in the book, it is more so like, because when you watch the movie, if you think about it, be like, why would you hang out with these motherfuckers? Like how his dad is. He's like, why are you with these motherfuckers? But in the book, it makes a lot more sense, which is, why we always say, read the book, don't watch the movie. Well, you can watch the movie, but read the book first. Let me see. What else was there? Teddy's breakdown. Like I said, prior to this, if you don't remember, they just got done dealing with Milo Pressman and Chopper. And Milo Pressman had called Teddy's dad, a loony. And, a Section 8, piece of shit, whatever the fuck. And it's important to emphasize that, because being crazy, honestly, not too long ago has, the stigma sort of shifted, but being crazy was like the worst thing you could be. It's like, you can't do nothing with yourself. You're crazy. You lost your mind. You're fucked. And so it's very painful, for Teddy to, hear from that other people really just think his dad is crazy. And I like that Stephen King points that out and paints it in such a way where and it could only make sense if the story is told the way that it is, which is in hindsight. And that's also what I like about it. This they say that Gordy is supposed to be Stephen King, but he hasn't confirmed that. That's not a thing. And like, what do you expect a writer to do? Like, we pull from our own experiences, our own lives, our own things that we've witnessed. So, naturally, in the main character, yes, you are going to find so many similarities between the author and the main character, because you're supposed to write what you know. Lots of Stephen King's stories, the main character, or there is at least a character in there in the story that is a writer, which is cool because he's a writer. And then it also leaves a lot of room, because if Gordy weren't a writer, I would question his narrative. I'd be like, why is this kid like so smart? Or, like, why is he, what makes him so different? Like, where is he getting all this education? And why does he seem deeper than the average 12-year-old? And so I think that's an important thing too, that he makes a lot of his characters writers, because writers just, they see things differently. We see things differently. But I liked that chapter 13 because he talks a lot in that hindsight voice. And I like how he talks, how he shows Teddy basically having like a mental breakdown, like somebody just kind of, like, he just went through like something triggering that like triggered his trauma of his dad fucking burning his ears. And I like that Gordy can't understand why Teddy feels so strongly about his father, when his dad was, not so good to him. And I wanted to like look into that deeper, speculate a bit. And so I think it could be a variety of things. But some things I was mulling around were, I think that's his the way that he contains himself. Because if he accepts that his father is crazy, especially in a simple time such as America in 1960 and in the tiny little town of Castle Rock, Maine, if he accepts his father as being a crazy person, then that could only mean that he's going to grow up to be nothing more than a crazy person. And I also find it endearing that they talk, Teddy keeps in his mind that his dad stormed the beach in Normandy, you know, because it's it's interesting because he still loves his dad, and it's almost like Teddy knows the future, like in the future that they're gonna know about things like PTSD, and you know, and then I bet he would be cool with that shit once he figured it out. Like, oh yeah, I'm so glad I didn't just hate my dad and be a fucking little prick about it, even though he literally fucked my life up. So I just thought that that was interesting. And I like that it's painted that way because, yeah, it won't be long before studies are done and they'll be able to diagnose Teddy's dad with PTSD. Cool. And so I think I like the theme, how he brings out the stigma of mental illness, where it is, where it was headed. He does kind of foreshadow with the way Teddy feels about it and how he still loves his dad and thinks highly of him and only wants to present him as such. He kind of like is foreshadowing, and he alludes to, yeah, in the future it's not always going to be seen like that. It's not always going to be the worst thing in the world to, you know, be a little crazy. And nothing, these things will be explained one day. We don't have all the answers now, but that's no reason to stop asking questions. Let's see. What else? Oh, as you could see, I was like giggling and shit while I was reading this intense train scene, and that's my bad. I totally had the spoiler there. Like, everybody's gonna be okay, because I wouldn't be laughing if, you know, 12-year-olds were about to die in this book. So my bad. But even in the movie, that part is like, it's light, and I think they pulled that off by having Vern's crawling the whole time, even though it says in the book that he's not, and that they're all, you know, just as tough and, you know, whatever the fuck. I like in the movie that they did that because it provides that relief, and I can't really imagine any other way they could provide that relief other than with the actual words. So thought that was, so I excused them not being, you know, right on the book. Because let me tell you, when I'm that person, don't take me to the movies. If I read the book, don't let me watch it, because I'm going to be sitting there the whole time. That's not true. That didn't happen. No. But fucking hell. What do we have left here? It looks like we got, but yeah, in this fucking scene, yeah, he's just yelling and screaming at Vern, and, you know, just like, go fucking faster. And I know anybody can relate to that sheer panic when you just gotta get the fuck out of Dodge, and you're fucking, what is that called? Your survival responses are just like, dude, go, fight or flight, and I chose flight. We gotta get out of here. And then somebody's in your way. Like, get the fuck out of my way. So he definitely brought that out. Let's see. Very good. I love how he writes, man. He makes me so happy, and I get in there like swimwear. All right, pumpkins. That's an hour. So next week, let's see where we're at. Okay. So next week is when I'll finish. It looks like it says there's 89 pages. And look at these little short pages. So next week's reading will run a little bit longer, but not too much. Not too much crazy. Am I missing anything? Am I forgetting anything? No, I'm mostly gonna save it up for next week. I hope you guys have been enjoying the story so far. We are going to have a nice, exciting conclusion. The infamous train scene. There's nothing quite like it, especially in the rest of the story. But this is one of those things where I'm like, I wish that I was old enough to have read the book before I saw the movie. I saw the movie when I was very little. My brother liked the movie a lot, and we owned it, and he was always watching it. And so I had seen bits and pieces a couple times, and I was, total girl, I'm like, I like the cute boy, because I loved River Phoenix. Still do. R.I.P. But as I got older and actually watched it and got to see all these different elements and themes, it was like, oh my God. And then finding out that not only was it a story or a book, but a book by my favorite author. I was like, oh my God. So in that sense, it was like, saw the movie, was a big fan of the movie, already like reading, and find out it was a book, it was like fucking jackpot. So that's why this story will always be near and dear to my heart, even though I did not read it for the first time until I was 15. And I didn't know that it was a book after seeing the movie so many times until I was maybe like 13. And then I learned it was a book, and I was like, wait a minute, what? Then there was the endless search of the book, because you're looking for the body, only to find out you're not going to find the body. You got to look for different seasons because it's embedded in a collection of short stories. So, but it's here. It's queer. Get used to it. And I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please check my Facebook and my Instagram for updates as far as next week. Because like I said, I am going to be moving pretty soon. I don't know if it's going to be next weekend, following weekend. So, but as it currently stands, we'll be back here. Same place, same time. Love you all. Stay safe. Stay safe. Stay safe. Go ahead, say it. Stay safe. Now that you've said safe, stay safe and keep being awesome. Bye-bye.